Screams erupted, the floor was covered in blood. Blood flowed from the students' eyes, noses, and mouths, their faces were filled with fear and agony, and they screamed. Mori sat on the floor, looking up at the scarred man standing nearby and asking, why? Terrified, she asked again, why do you want to kill us? We've only been studying here. The large man, Clark, responded, a very dangerous question, wouldn't you say? He recalled the image of skinny, dirty children from his past and calmly recounted the lives of the students, abandoned at birth, raised in orphanages. That villain taught the children about the human body so they could fight most efficiently. Clark said, extending a hand toward Mori's, learning to kill to become adults, sounds dangerous, doesn't it? Mori's was so scared she was about to cry, she backed away as Clark approached, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have been born. Then, a spray of blood hit Clark's face, along with his parting words, be born into a decent family in your next life. More blood splattered everywhere. Hilo, standing beside him, watched joyfully as Clark dealt with the students, her voice accompanying each punch. Blood sprayed onto the walls, she continued to cry out. Mori's was too scared to speak, only whimpering. Clark's expressionless face stared at Mori's without blinking. A cruel, resounding slap echoed through the room. Then Hilo came, pulling Clark's arm and saying, Clark, I can't take it anymore. He turned to her, wait a minute, Hilo, let's deal with this one first. Before he finished, she interrupted, no, we need to leave this one alive. Hilo looked at the blood-soaked classroom, then at the bodies on the floor, and said, the children are almost dead. Finally, she looked at the terrified Mori's, the sole survivor. Hilo felt excited and exclaimed, isn't this situation thrilling? Seeing Clark still standing, she urged, what, hurry up, he said, partly helpless, partly indulgent, you're hopeless. Fine, let's just tell the authorities a general story. After saying that, Clark and Hilo embraced and kissed passionately. Mori's took advantage of their distraction and escaped. And so, because of Clark's sudden change of heart, Mori survived. The sky had turned red as she ran a considerable distance. Mori's could only weep silently. She made indistinct sounds. Mori's felt exhausted, pained, her body gave out, and she collapsed, letting out a small cry before falling unconscious. She lost her way and wandered for a long time, aimlessly. That day, as Mori's was weakly walking, a man approached her and asked, are you Talem's disciple? The tall man wore a rough, menacing iron mask and continued, follow me. Then stated his purpose, fight with me for the revolution. Eventually, Mori's was taken in by Caracas. She joined Caracas's fight and caused immeasurable harm to the world. Later, Caracas was beaten severely, his face bruised, his body covered in blood. After Caracas's death, Mori's was captured by Tomi. Tomi used his magic to create extremely strong chains and tied her up, hanging her in the air. Tomi eventually puts her in Rucula's prison. The flashback ended, and a sorrowful Mori spoke, my whole life, I've learned this way. I thought that acting like this, living like this, was simply natural. Mori's looked at the man named Prof and said, and yet now. Suddenly, she angrily shouted, now you tell me I was wrong, how can I possibly accept that? She recalled years ago, someone calling her from behind Mori's. It was Sinka, and she laughed, telling Mori she wasn't wrong. The world is wrong, if I become queen, I'll change it into a place suited for you. Sinka's expression was full of sincerity. And she asked Mori's, would you like to be my subject? Returning to reality, Mori's demanded loudly, answer me, Prof. Mori's looked at the children, stammering, I. She recalled Utoritai's cold, blood-soaked face and spoke as Utoritai and those heroes had spoken. Her expression became vacant, and Mori's uttered the question she'd pondered for so long, could it be that I truly shouldn't have been born? Prof called out to her, Mori's. No one should not exist in this world. Prof spoke softly, he wanted to explain to Mori's that what she'd gone through was terrible, that he understood completely, but that didn't mean she was forgiven for her crimes. You've committed too many crimes. Her expression turned panicked after his words. And he placed his hand on his chest, speaking resolutely, I will go with you, soothe the pain you suffered as a child, and demand you take responsibility for the crimes you've committed. Mori stared at Prof from above without blinking, and then she heard him say he would accompany her as a teacher. Prof spoke, Mori's, I have one request. He wanted her to help block their view so the children wouldn't witness this, his final request before death. Something in his words angered her, and before Prof had finished, Mori screamed, "Shut up, shut up." Prof tilted his head back, seeing the sharp blade above him. Then he gently turned, smiling at his students. "Everyone, please turn your backs," the children called out in unison, "Teacher." His face was joyful. "Without regret," he said, "it's been an honor to teach you all this time." At this point, the children began to feel fear. Some cried, others were too scared to move. Mori's eyes were more ferocious than ever. The blade began to fall. Prof didn't dare look, only closing his eyes tightly. And then the blade fell with a loud thud. Prof slowly opened his eyes. And he saw Mori's head before him. He exclaimed in astonishment, "Mori's, someone like you." She said, "No need to follow." "I know I was wrong," she said, the blade beside her slowly dissipating. Mori's finished her last words. "I've known for a long time, I just didn't want to admit it, because once I admitted it, I realized I'd gone too far. It was disgusting." Her memory returned to that day in the auditorium, after punishing her friends, a stick in her hand. Her injured friends before her tried to comfort her. "Mori's, we're okay." A student hugged her arm and said, "If you didn't do that, Ms. Taylum would scold you, right? We'll be okay." Mori's lowered her head to the floor and saw her reflection, stained with her friend's blood. It was disgusting. Her memory shifted to the time she was captured by Tomi. Tomi called her Mori's. And continued, "It's time to stop living like someone else's puppet." Looking into Tomi's eyes, I saw my own disgusting reflection. Her memory continued to the time Mori's was in Rucula's prison. She sat alone in an empty room when a voice came from outside. "It's nice to meet you, Mori's." Mori's looked through the small window in the door and saw a very cute girl outside introducing herself. "I'm Hongjia, the jailer here. Is there anything bothering you?" In the dark cell, seeing my reflection in the bowl of soup the jailer gave me, I felt disgusted with myself. It was too painful, therefore, I couldn't admit it. I wasn't disgusted. The things I'd learned weren't wrong. What's disgusting is this world, and what's wrong is this world. I tried to believe that to keep living. Mori's remembered the image of the professor laughing happily with his students. Then she transformed back into her childhood body. Mori's looked at Prof's face, to the point of being stunned. The flashback ended. Returning to the present, the high-hanging glass panes began to crack and fall. Mori's exclaimed, It really is." She felt herself nearing her limit, her eyes slowly closing. "It was a life too disgusting," she said, then slowly faded and drifted away. Prof stood dumbfounded, watching the dissipating smoke, while his students rushed from afar to embrace him. Kingston said to Seo Gongyu, "Even if you're angry with me, the situation won't change." He calmly offered Gongyu sincere advice. "If you don't get stronger now, you can't kill that kid and that girl, the bottom line." Kingston paused, then continued, "It's still about yourself." Seo Gongyu, hearing this, didn't stop but continued to charge at him. Kingston, seeing he wasn't listening, continued. He used their recent fight as an example, saying to Seo Gongyu, "Just now, if you were stronger than me, you could have ignored me and killed the girl." Kingston continued lecturing him. Anger is just a stage of denial. Seo Gongyu showed no signs of calming down as he listened to the lecture. "You're angry because you can't accept your shortcomings, angry with yourself, aren't you?" Seo Gongyu lunged at Kingston again. He seemed to have lost patience with the advice, while Kingston calmly watched, thinking, "He doesn't want to admit it, but I understand, admitting one's shortcomings isn't easy." Kingston didn't intend to dodge Seo Gongyu's attacks, but he had to accept them. He calmly blocked Seo Gongyu's powerful attacks. Despite the relentless assault, he persisted. "Shortcomings are a part of you. Only when you accept and acknowledge them can you progress further, and only then can you achieve your goal." At this point, he suddenly turned serious. "I'll ask again." Kingston asked Seo Gongyu, "What made you so angry?" The question struck a raw nerve. Fragments of painful, shattered memories flooded Seo Gongyu's mind. Grim images of death and separation, dusted off and dragged back into reality, besieged his mind. He gritted his teeth, refusing to be swept away by those painful memories. Seo Gongyu could take no more and exploded in anger. He yelled at Kingston to shut up. Haunting images from the past appeared before Seo Gongyu's eyes. These images flowed into Kingston's hand as a dark, black stream. He spoke again, "And the reason for all this?" he asked, clenching the stream of memories flowing into his hand. Then, in a blink, he suddenly punched Seo Gongyu in the chest, sending him flying back in pain, the fragments of memory shattered with the blow. In that moment of falling, Seo Gongyu felt something strange. Painful memories of the past flooded his mind, moments of severe injury in battle, and witnessing loved ones facing life and death. All those memories, like an old film trapped in his mind, were suddenly awakened, leaving him unprepared. Outside was a bright, clear blue sky, in stark contrast to the gloomy atmosphere inside the building. Seo Gongyu lay motionless on the ground, staring blankly at the sky outside. Kingston slowly walked in front of him. He gently asked, "How are you? Have you calmed down at all?" Seo Gongyu remained silent, lost in thought for a long time. Then he suddenly raised his hand to his face and hesitantly asked, What should I do?" Kingston finally got Seo Gongyu's response. "What should you do?" He didn't answer the question, but said, "Don't you already know the answer?" He then extended his hand towards Seo Gongyu. Soon after, Seo Gongyu finally reached out and grasped that hand in response. Elsewhere, before what seemed like a cosmic gateway, someone suddenly spoke. Ah Ho-chan, frustrated, held her head and complained to Hyun Ju-young, "Seriously, I've finally met a familiar face I like, and they're telling me to go back already." Hyun Ju-young chuckled in response, "We have to follow orders." At that moment, his eyes glanced forward, and he added, "Besides, it seems someone's standing over there." As he looked at her, he said, "It doesn't seem like this is going to end soon. That girl is Myenji, a metahuman." In a corner of the ruined city, Lipus was struggling to defend against the relentless attacks of his opponent. On the other side, a Swede was continuously launching spells to attack Lipus. The continuous clashes caused loud explosions. At that moment, Sinka, having just escaped Seo Gongyu, arrived. A Swede had clearly opened a spatial rift. "Why aren't you coming back quickly? What are you doing?" A Swede turned his head and replied, "I still have things to do," but before he could finish, Sinka called out his name sternly. He was called like that, so he turned to look at her and suddenly saw a scene that surprised him. In front of him was a Sinka covered in wounds, his face burning with anger as he said loudly, "Come back now, or I will kill you." After that, things gradually settled down. The incident about Sinka's invitation was resolved, but the event left a ruined city, looking like a war zone, after that battle. Kingston is back with Seo Gongyu and he requests a meeting with the world government. The meeting takes place at a government headquarters building. A buzz of discussion filled the meeting room. So that's how it is. Kingston stood there calmly, smiling and saying to the others, "I wondered why we couldn't meet without any restrictions." He paused, glancing at everyone in the room before continuing, "It turns out it's because of some familiar faces." The familiar faces he mentioned, Bauda and Guerra, greeted him, "Long time no see, Kingston, how are you?" Kingston chuckled with the two, "So you finally climbed to that position." "Indeed, you greedy ones," Guerra calmly replied, "I think it's less ambitious than your goals." Bauda also smiled and agreed with Guerra, "Haha, that's right." Seeing that the three of them were no longer chatting, the man in the presiding seat immediately spoke, drawing their attention. "So, Kingston." That person was none other than Bizet. He hesitantly asked Kingston the reason for his meeting request. Kingston, upon being asked, didn't answer immediately. He looked at Bizet and asked, "You're the president, you're quite young, aren't you?" Only then did he get to the main point, "Actually, I'm not here to talk, but to make a one-sided announcement." He stood directly opposite Bizet, and forcefully declared, "Seo Gongyu is now my disciple, don't interfere, that's all." As soon as he finished speaking, the faces of everyone in the meeting room changed. Everyone was surprised by Kingston's announcement. No one anticipated that he would announce something like this. Afterwards, he didn't stay any longer and immediately left. After Kingston left, the key figures present in the meeting room immediately erupted into a discussion. Bizet asked for opinions for or against Kingston's proposal. The opposing side had 4 people, first, Kum, then Bauda, then Guerra, and finally, Einheit. The supporting side had only one person, Utoritai. And El Guido, who belonged to the neutral side, not siding with either faction. Utoritai, seeing so many people opposing, became slightly angry. He stood up abruptly, slammed the table, and questioned them, "Is that all you powerful people can do? Why are you opposing this? Overwhelming power is on our side. Are you going to miss this opportunity?" He pointed at Krum and questioned her, "Especially you, Krum, I don't understand your choice." Krum, upon being called out, frowned unhappily and said irritably, criminals are criminals, we cannot accept any of their requests, the government agreeing to meet is already irritating enough. Einheit, sitting next to Utorotai, also spoke up in opposition. That's ridiculous, Utorotai, wasn't Kingston the criminal you insisted on executing first, yet now you believe the words of someone you considered that dangerous, Utorotai quickly retorted, you people are unbelievable, the situation is different now, isn't it? On Bizet's side, he could only sit and listen to the incessant arguments. He was extremely troubled by this matter, lost in thought, trying to find a solution to this difficult situation, but the other's arguments made him pull his hair out in frustration. Damn it, this must be bad luck during my term. Meanwhile, in a warm, romantic bathroom, Sinka had returned and was soaking in a warm bath. Sinka was also troubled, she constantly bit her nails with a panicked and bewildered expression. She couldn't stop thinking about Kingston's terrifying power. That old man was supposed to be much weaker, after being imprisoned for so long. She couldn't help but worry, but was he really weaker? How strong was he at his peak? While Sinka was muttering to herself, wondering about her plan, Sungwon entered from outside and called her name, Sinka. Sungwon, naked except for a blanket wrapped around him, stood there and asked questioningly, you invited me to bathe together, but, is this really necessary to defeat Seo Gongyu? Sinka, seeing him enter and ask like that, happily spread her arms and replied, of course, this is an indispensable step for growth. Sungwon's appearance seemed to ignite something in her, making her more confident. No, my plan won't fail. She looked at Sungwon with shining eyes. I have Sungwon. She thought of many more secret cards, and a series of names appeared in her mind, like Hero, Therapiers, and Aura. Thinking that, she happily hugged Sungwon tightly, happily thinking, time will solve everything. She hugged him so tightly that Sungwon uncomfortably called out, I can't breathe. Moving on to the Hero Association. Utorotai sat solemnly in the front row. Myenji was also present. The moderator, seeing that many people had arrived, spoke up, it seems everyone is here. The moderator continued, then, regarding the election of the third generation of equality. The person standing on the podium is the interim guild master, Lipus. She looked down at the audience, glanced at everyone in the meeting hall once more, before officially announcing the start of the meeting. Lipus stood before the podium and clearly explained the process. The equality election process is as follows. She looked towards the candidates of varying appearances and continued, the association president proposes 5 candidates, if the number of heroes agree. Lipus briefly thought of the large government building standing tall in the sky, and her voice became firmer, each individual will be vetted by the government. The bronze honorary badge shining in the light is a symbol of each person's pride. She added that if no disqualifying reasons are found, they will be chosen as equality. Lipus, slightly hurried, quickly raised her hand to draw everyone's attention, and hesitantly said, the equality candidates I would like to propose are. Suddenly, a voice interrupted Lipus, making her hesitate and stop speaking. The other person arrogantly questioned, who allowed you to decide the candidates arbitrarily? That was Utorotai. He clasped his hands solemnly and sternly reminded Lipus, you're only the interim president. After regaining her composure, Lipus firmly asked him back, Utorotai, why are you here? You've been stripped of your hero status. Utorotai calmly replied, I'm here to attend the meeting as a representative of the leadership. Lipus sternly reminded him to wait until he understood his authority, then he just needed to sit still and observe. He had no right to discuss the association's affairs. Utorotai did not pay any attention to what she said but was very firm in his opinion. I will say it again, I do not recognize you as the association's president. Lipus excitedly shouted, there's no need for you to care. Utorotai continued calmly, therefore. He glared at her threateningly, simultaneously warning all the candidates present, our world government will boycott any equality candidate chosen by the interim president, Lipus, for any reason. Lipus was stunned by his ominous words. She exclaimed, what? The entire hall fell into solemn silence. Utorotai said clearly, you are not the official president, just temporary. Everyone listened to his words in unison. The Utorotai seemed to gain more courage, and frankly stated his opinion, the important decision of choosing equality. You decide the future of the association, one person cannot decide for the time being. At this point, Utorotai emphasized in a stern voice that it must be done by an officially appointed president. Lipus quickly objected, Utorotai, do you know the current situation? we need to choose equality as soon as possible to solve the crisis. Utorotai sarcastically asked her back, solve the crisis, it's laughable to hear that from you, Lipus. He suddenly recalled the past regarding the map of Portugal. Utorotai then prompted, let me hear it, Lipus, what did you do in Portugal? Utorotai remembered the valiant Swede fighting, then continued in a low voice, instead of catching criminals, you were just playing around with a Swede. Lipus became agitated and quickly explained her motives. Behind her, a beautiful magic circle shone brightly. Do you think that if you don't kill the target, everything is just a joke? I prioritized protecting civilians first. She suddenly remembered when Rausa unleashed his power, then Prof and the children angrily looked towards Utorotai and sternly questioned him, and you, Utorotai, I heard you intended to sacrifice the children who were taken hostage. Lipus expressed her dissatisfaction. Why do you always make others sacrifice themselves like that? You haven't changed at all. Utorotai called out her name sternly, Lipus. Utorotai glared, looking incomprehensible. Why should I change? You're the one who needs to change. Lipus suddenly froze for a moment, staring intently at him. The large hall resonated again with the man's low voice. It wasn't that Utorotai paused for a moment. He stood up, turned, and stared at the people behind him. You all need to change. Utorotai casually spread his arms and asked, what about what I did in Portugal? I made a decision appropriate to the situation. Looking at their deep and patient expressions, he happily continued, in the end, there were no casualties, right? Lipus didn't expect the person in front of her to so blatantly switch black and white. She gritted her teeth in indignation. Utorotai, he continues to sacrifice, well said. Utorotai pointed at her and said seriously, you are the one sacrificing this society, to protect criminals. Utorotai briefly thought about the towering building always brightly lit, using the valuable tax money of the people to nurture and protect countless murderers. Seeing her silence, he took advantage of the situation, then used the excuse of social responsibility and reform. All those words sounded good. He thought of the court of justice as a dark nightmare. Reform, that's ridiculous. Utorotai excitedly asserted, they will never change, all scum. He felt as if he had seen Sinka secretly manipulating the whole planet. Look, just escaped and preparing. Utorotai emphasized hiding under that madwoman to prepare for another massacre in this situation. Lipus was silent, not knowing how to refute his argument. Utorotai sarcastically asked, as someone who was once a Mago's apprentice like you, can you choose equality and run the Hero Association yourself? Utorotai said again, without looking, you know what it will be like. It will be full of nonsense like heroes can't kill people, pretending to be upright and noble to comfort themselves. Utorotai looked at Lipus for a long time. He firmly stated, Lipus, nobody wants you to be the president of the Hero Association. You are not the president of the Hero Association, don't pretend to be one anymore. Lipus could only grit her teeth and look at him with indignation. Soft sunlight streamed into the hall through the skylights. Lipus compromised, alright, Utorotai. She said firmly, so what you're saying is that if I become the official president, I can proceed according to the correct procedure. Utorotai stood up and said firmly, yes, that's right. Lipus looked at the attendees who had been silent until now and continued. Then, Lipus bluntly shouted, let's vote. Utorotai seemed to want to find an advantageous solution for himself. You mean a nationwide vote? Okay. Lipus immediately dismissed it, no. Her voice echoed throughout the majestic hall because of the urgency of time, so I. Lipus looked out, trustingly at the rows of crowded seats, and continued that she would gather opinions from the heroes here, and the decision would be based on the majority vote. She asked for his opinion. Utorotai hesitated slightly, looked around. Majority vote, aren't they all heroes carefully selected by Rausa? He focused on their appearances and sharply said, this is too biased. Lipus remembered the bronze badge filled with pride, and based on that, she set a rule, so, like the equality selection process, 2/3 of the votes are needed for approval. Utorotai hesitated and pondered for a long time. He thoughtfully looked at the heroes sitting around him. Time silently passed by minute. Finally, the results were announced. The voting content appeared on a blue background. The question, do you accept Lipus's choice of equality? The result verification is complete. 52% of the votes were in favor, while 48% were opposed. The result was deemed not to have achieved enough affirmative votes. Therefore, the result was changed to not passed. Lipus stared in shock at the numbers on the screen. The words 48% opposed, not enough 2/3 affirmative votes, result not passed were like a persistent nightmare tormenting her mind. Lipus hesitated in the face of the result. In contrast to her situation was Utoritai's gleeful demeanor. Well. He laughed smugly and triumphantly, it hasn't achieved the desired majority yet. Utoritai smirked sarcastically, perhaps we need to re-elect the president of the association. As Utoritai said, the heroes here have all been selected and active since President Rouse's time. Lipus could not have foreseen this outcome, she stared blankly at the crowd. The result was not enough 2/3 of the votes in favor, the result was not passed, now clearly before our eyes, the reason for this result is Utoritai. The scene was turbulent, his image appeared vividly. The moment the incident at Rucula's prison occurred, a devastating catastrophe that made the prison even more gloomy and barbaric. He quickly approached all the heroes, Utoritai pleaded earnestly to persuade them, carefully presenting his viewpoint. Initially, most opposed Utoritai, the second-generation president. The heroes' faces uniformly showed displeasure. But in this situation, as Utoritai persistently explained and followed up, gradually many were persuaded. A barbaric event was unfolding, importantly, even if disagreeing with Utoritai's ideology. The powerful presidential seat appeared before them, quite a few heroes agreed that a re-election was necessary, from his perspective. The presidential position became increasingly clear, the reason was because Rouse's radiant appearance emerged. To lead her policies, Rouse possessed overwhelming power and achievements that proved her ideals. Lipus appeared in stark contrast, lacking both of those things compared to Rouse. That bronze power insignia served as further confirmation. The legitimacy to inherit Rouse's ideals seemed to fit Seo Gongyu, a former member of Equality. However, Seo Gongyu's image was now almost synonymous with barbarity and bloodshed in the public eye, but because Seo Gongyu had changed his views and killed the prisoners. The scene returned to the current hall, opinions among the heroes began to diverge. Utoritai's voice taunted Lipus, it seemed her teammates also doubted her ability as president of the Hero Association. What would she do now? Lipus, stunned, stammered, a vote. Utoritai interrupted, a nationwide vote. Lipus trembled, repeating, but time doesn't allow it, we can choose a candidate and let the heroes decide. Utoritai cut in, no, that's not right. He briefly thought of Rouse's dignified figure and used it as an excuse. You know this, the respected third president, Rouse, clearly stated that the position of president of the Hero Association must be elected through a nationwide vote, and in cases of emergency or natural disasters, the government can shorten the election period. Lipus was stunned, unable to say more. The entire hall was filled only with Utoritai's mocking question, oh, you know this, don't you? Utoritai confidently continued, anyone, even if not a member of the association, can run for president of the association, that's also a rule established by the respected Rouse. All the heroes were silent, as if agreeing with him. Utoritai sarcastically looked at her, hey, temporary president, what are you still standing there for? Utoritai triumphantly ordered, quickly inform the government that we will be holding a presidential re-election so they can set a date, you must fulfill your duties as president. Lipus was in a difficult position, she hesitated, unsure of the right course of action. Utoritai's voice hardened, emphasizing, even if it's only temporary. Utoritai resigned as world leader and announced his candidacy for president of the Hero Association. The question posed to all citizens was, of the two candidates, Utoritai and Lipus, who is more suitable to be president of the Hero Association? Golden sunlight streamed into the luxurious presidential office. Bizet, comfortable, was dozing occasionally on the armchair. Suddenly, his eyebrows furrowed, revealing worry and anxiety. Bizet drifted back to a distant day in the past. It was a beautiful sunny day, the vast blue sky looked down on a lush green forest. Bizet, in hiking attire with a large backpack, paused momentarily due to a sudden sound. Quite the nerve, he thought. Before him was Kingston, in martial arts attire, sitting leisurely on a high rock. He probed, why the private meeting? Is it proper for the president to do this? Bizet approached the base of the rock. He looked up and honestly replied, I've heard a lot about you from Bauda and Guerra. I don't think you'll harm me. Kingston mumbled, these old folks are shameless. Kingston quickly returned to the subject. He genuinely complimented, I hear you don't have abilities, yet you've risen to the highest position. Impressive. Bizet didn't pay much attention. quickly and directly stating, "Mr. Kingston, it's just the two of us, I'll ask directly." Bizet looked seriously into Kingston's eyes, as if to verify. He gravely asked, "What is your purpose?" Kingston didn't answer directly, only looking at him with deep eyes, softly asking, "President, do you understand the development of abilities?" Bizet pondered and answered. In his mind, the image of a bright light bulb with its filament glowing appeared. He slowly said, "If we talk about the development of abilities, the summoning system becomes clearer, the power greater." Bizet then thought of those with bulging muscles. As for the special and physical systems, after puberty, they would be strongest during their physical peak. Amidst the majestic mountains, a gentle breeze blew, carrying green leaves, and Kingston's indifferent voice, half right, half wrong. Bizet was surprised. Before Bizet's questioning gaze, Kingston slowly explained, "It's true that both the physical and ability systems get stronger with maturity." But he slightly moved his hand, from which a hazy black dust emanated. Kingston's cold voice rang out, "But the physical system can break predetermined limits through rigorous training." Bizet was astonished. The trees rustled again. Kingston continued, "Aren't you curious?" Kingston thought of a ferocious red figure with immense power, capable of summoning wind and rain. What if a person reached the highest level of the ability system and simultaneously upgraded their physical system to the highest level? Bizet considered this. He brought his hand to his mouth, exclaiming, "Then the nation would find it difficult to control." Kingston, on the high rock, called out, "Hey, President." He subtly raised an eyebrow, mischievous. "You should ask Seo Gongyu about this. I'm not the one to answer that question. I simply want to see where the ultimate limit of humanity lies." Bizet was quite surprised. Kingston softened his tone. "That's all." The flow of memories shifts again. Bizet recalled himself sitting in a chair before a desk. He gently turned to the person opposite, saying with authority, "You want to add someone to equality." He sat opposite Rausa, honestly saying, "I really didn't expect such an important procedure wouldn't need to be approved." Rausa firmly asserted that he deserved it. Bizet probed further, "If you say so, then his abilities must be very good. As a teammate, is he trustworthy?" Rausa replied confidently, "As trustworthy as his abilities." She added, "I consider him a trustworthy teammate." The words were similar to another moment in the past. It was then, when he was talking to Kingston, in his sight, that Bizet said "I then." Bizet then strongly believed in his intuition. He said without hesitation, "I believe in Seo Gongyu." Kingston suddenly said something unexpected, leaving Bizet puzzled. Kingston said, "So the answer is clear, isn't it?" He offered a wry smile. After all, opposition wouldn't change anything. The scene shifted. A sigh of relief echoed in the chairman's office. Finally, Bizet stood up, resting his hands on the table with relief. An important decision had been made, so a temporary sigh of relief was in order. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed. The secretary outside the door urgently poked her head in, timidly calling for the chairman. After being granted permission, she entered solemnly and announced, "I heard the Hero Association is electing a new chairman." Bizet seemed interested, gesturing for her to continue. The secretary continued hesitantly, She hesitated before announcing an urgent matter. Authority had just announced their candidacy for chairman of the Hero Association. It seemed that Bizet did not want the lifting to happen at all. His face showed disappointment, boredom and confusion. Kingston's satisfied expression appeared. Bizet had accepted Kingston's conditions. This matter was only known to officials attending the World Government Conference. The conference took place in a formal room with few attendees. This matter was kept top secret. Meanwhile, in the majestic skyscraper, the election for chairman of the Hero Association would also proceed within the framework set by the government. The bustling city was even more lively at night. After 3 days of registration, there would be 3 public debates. In contrast, the hall was enveloped in tension. For 2 weeks, a proportionally divided circle with a red border appeared. The guildmaster of the Hero Association would be elected through a nationwide vote. The ever-lit, maximum security prison presented a difficult problem, however. The elected chairman's term would be a maximum of 4 years. If the prison break at Ruculus prison was resolved, the term would end. Beneath the city's peaceful exterior were hidden schemes. Also, in principle, anyone could register as a candidate, thus, too many candidates could easily lead to chaos. At this time, the bright spots representing the centers of power worldwide held more importance than ever. Therefore, only those endorsed by regional hero representatives could run. Utorotai, with their serious clock symbol, and Lipus, with their rabbit and carrot symbol, became two distinct factions. During the registration period, Utorotai and Lipus successively announced their candidacies. In the familiar conference room, the purple-haired girl Mute, a metahuman, took the microphone and began, "Hello, members of the Hero Association, I am Mute, and I will be hosting this chairman election." Before the serious participation of the bigwigs, Mute explained the election process. Candidates would have the opportunity to address the entire association. She looked towards Utorotai, who was already on the podium, and introduced, first, a speech from candidate Utorotai. He addressed the heroes before him. "I'll keep it brief." Utorotai pressed a control, and an LED screen appeared. Utorotai gestured for them to look. It was a sharp image of the inmates in Rucula's prison. Utorotai sharply said, "Because of your unwavering pursuit of ideals, these monsters were released." He looked down at the heroes and questioned, "What are you going to do? Capture them, imprison them, and then release them again?" Utorotai frowned, showing displeasure. "I believe you won't repeat that foolish act again." Next was Lipus's speech. She stood seriously on the podium, confidently presenting evidence to support her views. During Utorotai's tenure, they condoned heroes massacring civilians. Lipus thought of those heroes. Hero, Clark, her voice growing firmer. Perhaps the number of civilians killed by heroes was no less than that killed by villains. She thought of Sinka's vicious image, agreeing with the urgency of the situation. "I know the situation is critical. A madman preaching eugenics is threatening humanity, but Utorotai is no different from that insane Sinka." Lipus looked at those below, earnestly continuing, "He places a high and low value on human life, using the guise of justice to force minorities to sacrifice themselves." She closed her eyes, showing sorrow. "Friends, everyone is equal. Please don't forget the hero's duty that Rausa emphasized." Lipus's rabbit symbol and Utorotai's clock symbol were diametrically opposed. The initial strategies of both candidates were as follows. In the city with its skyscrapers, consolidate support bases. Across the continent, both were busy attracting regional hero representatives to their side. The authoritative clock symbol appeared, representing the heroes supporting Utorotai. That was Angunasukti, the experienced man from North America, and Ajit Lidio, the elder from India. The rabbit insignia appeared, representing the heroes supporting Lipus, representatives from Europe. That was Pocket, a girl from Oceania. Myenji, the masked individual from China, and Karfagar, the man from the Middle East. Also, Hassan from South America. And Altarigo from Africa. In the city center, after both candidates consolidated their support bases, they appeared on the front pages of newspapers with eye-catching headlines. Both Lipus and Utorotai continuously waged public opinion campaigns until the last day of the election, using negative attack strategies to undermine each other. That moment arrived, and on the last day of candidate registration, Mute brightly held the microphone, watching the LED board and announcing, "So the registration period is over, right?" Mute looked at the screen in front of her. There would be 3 debates. Suddenly, she was extremely surprised. Mute turned to the others and the screens in front of them, exclaiming, What's this?" She announced that another person had unexpectedly registered as a candidate. Both Utorotai and Lipus were extremely surprised, instinctively looking at the screen for information. A throat-clearing sound echoed throughout the hall. Ahem, ahem, a strange voice rang out. "Hello, members of the Hero Association." A young girl stood on the stage, softly introducing herself. "I am Medius." Contrary to her voice, her eyes revealed a sinister glint and a hint of triumph. She continued, "My current occupation, high school student." Lipus's eyes widened in disbelief at the sight before her. What in the world is happening? Utorotai, though silent, wore an expression of contempt and disdain. After a moment, he exclaimed in astonishment, "What the hell is this?" Medius's unexpected appearance caused the atmosphere in the hall to momentarily plummet. In contrast to the stiff, awkward atmosphere, Medius's face showed confidence. She clearly anticipated this situation. Medius's appearance visibly irritated Utorotai. He immediately complained, "What is this situation? Do they think the election for the president of the Hero Association is a high school class president election? Clearly, only those endorsed by a hero representing region can run, that's right." The murmurs of disapproval from the crowd seemed about to erupt. Suddenly, a stern voice spoke, "I will support her." It was Karfagar, the hero representing the Middle East region. Karfigar's words stunned the entire hall. Utorotai and Lipus couldn't believe their ears, their eyes wide in shock. What? Lipus, in particular, was astonished to see a representative who had previously supported her change sides. Sir Karfigar, you supported me. Karfigar, without hesitation, calmly replied, I've changed my mind. Nothing seemed to be able to change Karfigar's decision. His eyes were filled with seriousness. Now I support Medius, that girl. Medius smiled faintly, as if she had anticipated this outcome, her deep gaze seeming to see through the world. In a flash, the situation changed. Medius emerged as a new factor that overturned the entire game, and so, candidate number 1, Lipus. The first two candidates had no significant differences. Candidate number 2, Utorotai. The biggest difference in this race came from the newly emerged candidate, candidate number 3, Medius. 3 candidates were officially registered. News outlets quickly updated with the breaking news. The new information was hotly debated and published on major newspapers. TSK, seeing Medius dominate the media, Utorotai couldn't help but feel annoyed. Every newspaper was talking about that high school student. It was quite the sensation. News of Medius spread, garnering mixed reactions. It seemed the press would be quite lively. However, many criticized Karfigar and the girl, saying the election wasn't a game. Had that girl investigated? Utorotai quickly took action. First, he needed more information about Medius, but data about her remained scarce. She was just a normal high school girl, nothing special. Utorotai began making judgments and 1,000 hypotheses about Medius's identity. Does she possess superpowers? The vague data quickly caused his secretary to panic. That's unclear, perhaps some kind of talent, right? Confusion filled the room. Medius's mystery caused even Utorotai to fall silent. Meanwhile, Lipus was visibly unhappy. She questioned Karfigar. Karfigar, explain yourself. Karfigar remained calm and unfazed by Lipus's questioning, inviting her to ask anything. Lipus thought Karfigar was being too emotional. Perhaps it was a rash decision made without careful consideration. Did you know that girl beforehand? Even so, you can't let personal feelings influence such an important matter. No, I've never met her before. What? Karfigar began recalling the events that led to his decision. A few days ago, before I entered my office to work, he had encountered Medius earlier. In my own office, I saw her sitting in my chair. At that time, Karfigar showed clear animosity towards Medius. He frowned. At first, I thought she was an infiltrator sent by the villains and was about to subdue her. Karfigar's hostile attitude didn't last long. It began to fade before Medius's words, but after a few conversations, Karfigar's memories seemed muddled. He no longer remembered the details clearly. Dozens, hundreds, countless times. There was some sort of magic in Medius's words. Karfigar felt drawn in, starting to agree with and support her. I felt like I had talked to her many times, and then, I don't know when, I was certain I had to support her. Karfigar's unclear memories left Lipus completely baffled. She wore an expression of utter incomprehension. Lipus couldn't let Karfigar continue to dwell on his memories. Excuse me, sir. Yes, go ahead. Lipus quickly used her powers on Karfigar. Lipus's power manifested as 2 large rabbits with medical symbols on their heads, gently appearing behind Karfigar. Indeed, Lipus found nothing unusual. This astonished her. There were no signs of hypnotic influence or mind manipulation. But what is going on? Finding no evidence of foul play, Lipus could only try to reason with Karfigar. However, when Karfigar interrupted her, saying this isn't just a feeling, Lipus, I've told you how many times. Karfigar's eyes shone like a devout follower gazing at their god, eyes of unwavering loyalty and absolute faith. I believe she must become the president of the association. With Karfigar being so adamant, what more could Lipus say? Any advice would be superfluous at this point. Medius's appearance remains a big question mark in this election. A mysterious figure has appeared. What will her appearance bring to humanity's future? A difficult question to answer, not just a mystery, but not a threat. Those directly affected include Utorotai and Lipus, but they have more pressing matters to attend to. Utorotai and Lipus still have many questions, but they decided this wouldn't affect the situation and focused on each other. It seems both of them don't consider Medius a rival. They're solely focused on competing against each other. The debate is about to begin. The debate begins with the sweet voice of the host. Mute waves to the audience. Greetings, esteemed audience. I am Mute, your host for this debate. before we begin, allow me to explain the rules. First, the time. Mute begins the explanation. Each candidate will have 10 minutes to speak. Each person is assigned a turn for this debate. The order of speaking follows candidate numbers. The candidates will not only make speeches, they must also prepare difficult questions. Within these 10 minutes, candidates can present their platforms or ask questions of their opponents. The time factor still plays an important role in this question-asking section. The time allotted for the answer will be deducted from the questioner's time, therefore, they can interrupt if they feel they don't need to hear everything. Another interesting mechanism is the rebuttal section. In addition, during the opponent's speech, each candidate gets 2 chances to present a rebuttal. Mute smiled brightly, meticulously explaining the rules of the debate from beginning to end, taking the lead for 1 minute each time. Now, let's begin the debate. The candidates quickly introduce themselves to the public. Candidate number 1 Luz: "Hello, I am Lipus, a student of Mago and a member of Equality." Next is Utoritai. Candidate number 2: "It's a pleasure to meet you all, I am Utoritai, the former president of the Second Generation Hero Association." Finally, the newcomer to the election, candidate number 3, Medius: "This is my first time meeting you all, I am Medius." The debate begins immediately after the introductions, starting with candidate number 1, Lipus. True to form for a temporary guild master, Lipus expertly guides her presentation. "We have experienced countless wars." The speech begins with the root cause of the current situation. Since the appearance of superpowers centuries ago, wars between nations have erupted. Next is the development of the contradictions in each stage. After the unification of the world government, countless civil wars followed. These contradictions have taken many forms without ever disappearing, and after the emergence of the Hero Association, society was again divided between heroes and villains. War has become a constant throughout each stage. Lipus seems to emphasize the process of being immersed in this terrifying inevitability. We have spent most of our time in such societal collapse. From the bitterness brought about by conflict, Lipus once again highlights the role of many veteran heroes, but thanks to the efforts of Rausa and many others, a new societal foundation has been built. True to her teacher Mago, her speech is firm and resolute, and now society is beginning to function properly. Lipus refers to the Utoritai as tearing down all the work of past heroes. Think back to the time of the Utoritai. Back then, heroes were like outlaws with inconsistent beliefs and methods. They indiscriminately slaughtered villains and civilians. It seems this speech is entirely aimed at Utoritai, with the purpose of undermining him. If Utoritai becomes president of the association, those events will repeat themselves, and the society we've worked so hard to build will collapse. Lipus is arguing passionately when Utoritai interrupts her. Society is already collapsing. Utoritai doesn't remain silent. Taking the initiative, he requests a 1-minute rebuttal. "Don't you see the current situation? This old man has lived many years, his rebuttal experience is considerable. I truly can't understand why the sacrifices I endured, even though tearful, are considered massacres, yet, your sacrificing society for criminals is seen as moral." Utoritai begins his argument. His words are equally persuasive. "We must understand that this world cannot achieve any lofty goal without sacrifice, if sacrifice is inevitable." Even though it's Lipus's turn, Utoritai's rebuttal gains considerable agreement. "We must ensure that such sacrifice does not become meaningless. All seeds of evil must be completely eradicated." Utoritai speaks at length as if this is his playground. "See, because of the remaining seeds of evil, this situation arose." Lipus notices something is wrong. It seems this old man is cheating. "Wait, Utoritai, your minute isn't over yet." So he intentionally placed his hand on the clock, using his superpower to extend his rebuttal time. "Take your hand off the clock immediately, a minute can be so long." No wonder Utoritai has been talking so much, he sneers, clearly smug. "What are you saying?" That provoking expression makes Lipus even angrier. She replies, "If you don't remove your hand." Before Lipus can finish her sentence, Mute's amplified voice rings out, "Enough, enough." Lipus is immediately silenced by Mute, unable to continue. Mute uses her power to silence Lipus, simultaneously reiterating the rules. "Lipus, you may only speak when your opponent's rebuttal time is over." Mute's power silences. Utoritai is also quickly warned, but the stubborn old man shrugs, seemingly unconcerned. "Utoritai, please refrain from using your abilities." The battle seems to revolve entirely around Lipus and Utoritai. They are striving for a certain image. Their actions are completely understandable, they are fiercely defending their positions in the election. Public image is extremely important. Currently, it's a state of quasi-war. Authority and Lipus attempt to project a strong image to the public. The two sides argue incessantly. Lipus's face is tense, constantly raising her voice and attacking. Authority is no less so, his face is filled with anger. During their time, instead of emphasizing their platforms, Authority and Lipus only focus on attacking each other. The debate proceeds in extreme tension, but naturally, the strong image is, Authority begins to cast doubt. He openly belittles Lipus, but this is actually very suspicious. A girl who can't handle a single villain, how will she solve this situation, or does she mean to say she's stronger than Rausa? Lipus is far inferior to Authority in both experience and cunning. Lipus is no match for Authority. Her master's shadow is too large for Authority to overcome. It's fortunate she's running for office. In the public eye, she's only known as Mago's disciple and is still in a position needing further learning. Her appearance also becomes a disadvantage for Lipus, making it difficult for her to win over the public. Most importantly, her rabbit-like appearance leads people to associate her with weakness. Authority's deep gaze silently assesses the situation, then. His next target is Medius. If he can just crush that variable, this debate will end as he desires. Finally, Medius takes the stage in an atmosphere leaning towards Authority. She doesn't seem nervous or anxious. Medius's turn has come. Medius begins her argument in an unexpected way. She comments on her opponents. Mr. Authority has transformed the Hero Association from a small organization into a global corporation with his decisiveness and excellent promotional abilities. Lipus also receives praise from Medius. Lipus, inheriting Rausa's will, has strengthened this corporation with strong ideals and beliefs. Medius calmly continues amidst the bewilderment of her two opponents. Therefore. Then she makes a shocking statement. Therefore, I want to combine the strengths of both to solve the current situation. Medius is about to continue when Authority interrupts her. My platform is that little girl. He uses a condescending tone to mock Medius. This isn't a student guildmaster election. Go back and study. This debate isn't the place to discuss policy. This old man is incredibly tactless, continuing to severely mock Medius. Or did you fail your studies and came here to impose your prejudices on your opponents? He kept nagging so much that Mute had to speak up to stop him. Mr. Authority, your time is up. It's okay, I'm willing to use my time to talk. Before the Medius's expansion, Authority took advantage of the situation. So tell me, boy, what do you want to talk about? Medius showed a look of indifference and continued, I possess supernatural abilities. She began to reveal information about herself. The ability training school that Rausa built when he was chairman is where I grew up. So you wouldn't know what abilities I possess. Oh really? So, what special abilities does this kid have? Medius wasn't about to fulfill all of Authority's demands. I'm under no obligation to tell you that. But Authority stubbornly refused to let go. No, you have to tell me. If you want to lead the association, you need to have the appropriate abilities. Authority began to use logic to force Medius to comply. No hero in the association will follow a leader who is not capable enough, so. Medius issued a direct challenge, her eyes shining with confidence and arrogance. Choose a place, Mr. Authority, we'll fight as soon as possible. Authority was speechless at Medius's proposal. He was stunned. What? The debate was being live-streamed on all platforms, and naturally, Medius's challenge was immediately broadcast. Office workers took advantage of their lunch break to watch the live stream, so engrossed they forgot to eat. Medius's image was currently being watched by her family. 9 people per square meter were watching the live stream on their phones. The debate was even being shown on billboards on skyscrapers, a live challenge. Authority, the recipient of the challenge, was still stunned, his eyes wide, his mouth agape in astonishment. Without waiting for Authority to process the situation, Medius went straight to the main point. Let's discuss the fight with you, Authority. The rules will be mixed martial arts using supernatural abilities. How does that sound? Authority remained unresponsive. Experience told him he was in a difficult situation. Authority fell into deep thought. Faced with Medius's challenge, Authority froze, an unexpected direct challenge. All of Authority's tactics were rendered almost useless, no matter how strong an image he had built. Hearing such an unexpected response left Authority flustered. Authority had been calling Medius kid this whole time, and ended up shooting himself in the foot. Furthermore, his strategy of labeling his opponent was becoming a trap for himself. Currently, Utorotai faced two choices, if he accepts the condition. This choice would somewhat damage his image. Having considered his opponent a kid from the start would make the image of him fighting a kid seem strange. After some consideration, it was still clear that Utorotai would be at a disadvantage. Also, with his current overwhelming political position, if he really faced off in the ring, Utorotai would be lowered to the same level as his opponent, damaging his prestige. With this choice, two situations could occur. Even if he wins, it would be a meaningless victory. In either situation, Utorotai's reputation would suffer, but if he loses, it could even end his political career. Looking at Media's confident expression, everyone knew she had just made a risky move, cornering her opponent. So, what if he refuses the condition? This choice would bring even more risks. He would be labeled as someone afraid to fight a kid and be seen as a coward. This decision would surely bring Utorotai a lot of criticism. As a coward, the image he had painstakingly built would certainly be tarnished. This would severely damage his strong image. Under this difficult situation, Utorotai considered various options. In a short period of time, Utorotai sped up his thinking, coming up with a series of countermeasures. But Matre, who had participated in countless debates, was also surprised by this move. No matter which choice he made, the most important thing to determine was. Media's fearless expression and her mysterious abilities made the game even more difficult for Utorotai, this girl's supernatural abilities. Utorotai fell into deep thought for a long time. The triumphant expression he had during the debate with Lipus completely disappeared. What kind of supernatural abilities did she possess? At this time, the scene shifted to a lush green area, with fresh air. Kingston lay on the grass, looking at the sky and the earth, extremely relaxed. Lately, haven't you felt something strange? Seo Gongyu heard Kingston's ambiguous words and was extremely confused. What do you mean? Kingston continued with his philosophical words. I don't quite understand, but whatever, I have a feeling that the words just spoken are being repeated continuously. Well, I always feel that way. How long will this go on? Kingston replied with a sigh, his gaze distant and thoughtful. Hayes, is it because I'm getting old that I feel something unusual? On this side, Medius refused to give Utorotai any more time to think. She directly asked, why aren't you answering, Utorotai? Utorotai knew he had to quickly come up with a countermeasure, so. Utorotai didn't answer directly, but spoke in a long-winded and evasive manner. It's true that a kid would act emotionally. Daring to challenge during a debate like this is not at all rational. It seems I have to drag this debate into the mud to get through this situation. He again acted mature to overwhelm Medius. Hey kid, this debate isn't a place for games, but this old man has picked the wrong person. Since Medius has joined, she's determined to fight to the end. I'm completely serious, Utorotai. Medius even used Utorotai's own arguments to counter him and to become chairman of the association. The most important thing is strength, just as you said. The argument you used against Lipus earlier is what's now cornering you. While you were talking to Lipus, you also said that Lipus was weaker than Rausa and therefore couldn't be trusted, right? Medius continued, giving examples from the hero headquarters during the time he was chairman. Medius's sharp analysis had no flaws. You had the heroes fight each other to rank them, didn't you? Every word Medius spoke made Utorotai freeze. Then let's try ranking with me once. Medius was determined to push Utorotai to the end. If you don't feel comfortable holding it here, let's decide on a location after the debate. Seeing that his stalling tactic had failed and he'd been countered by Medius, Utorotai realized the situation. Damn it, I've run into a real viper. Medius extended her hand towards Utorotai with goodwill, but her smile held a few hints of malicious intent. From the start, you shouldn't have provoked her. She's not like you, she has nothing to lose. Utorotai continued to drag her feet, intending to use the time-wasting tactic again. Okay, what she said made sense. He continued to speak, but no sound came out of his throat, so now. It turned out to be Mute's ability. Authority was truly silenced. He couldn't speak even if he wanted to. Mute quickly signaled, the time for Authority's nonsense is over. Medius has decided not to allow any more stalling. Please remain silent. Authority was stunned and flabbergasted, having lost all initiative. This kid was just waiting for the answer she wanted and then cutting off his time, wasn't she? Seeing how flawlessly Medius calculated everything, Authority couldn't help but feel apprehensive. What kind of ability did she possess to be so confident? In a passive position, all of authority's actions were extremely disadvantageous. Should he? He was hesitating about playing dirty. Maybe he could risk it and try a risky move, maximize speed, if he acted without anyone noticing. While contemplating, authority suddenly froze, a look of panic evident on his face. It turned out Medius was facing him, observing authority's every gesture. Authority was shocked. Luckily, he hadn't yet resorted to violence. Medius, with her deep, violet eyes, seemed to see through her opponent's soul. Her indifferent, emotionless expression sent chills down authority's spine. His eyes widening in fear. Countless doubts seemed to have appeared in authority's mind. Could she possibly? After a while of struggling, Medius's speech finally began. The first debate was nearing its end. Medius's statement began. Medius began with a concrete analogy, visualizing the current problems. After countless wars, our society is like a tangled mess of knots, full of unresolved issues. The problems were so numerous that the knots in Medius's mind were a complete jumble. Those knots had no intention of being untied. Then, the impact of humans on those problems was abruptly cut off. The person who cut everything off, as Medius mentioned, is a familiar name. I think it's authority. However, authority's solution didn't make the problem disappear. Instead of cleaning up the severed knots, he continued to cut relentlessly. Therefore, even the normal threads began to be cut. There's also another character who deeply influences these problems. He took those threads and reconnected them. I believe it's Rausa. It's not to say that Medius's analogy is extremely reasonable. Rausa is the one who heals this world. However, the problem doesn't stop there. That's why the world is in such chaos now. But among the knots that Rausa reconnected, there were also rotten knots that had infiltrated. This is causing the current problem. Medius is perhaps continuing the previous generation's perspective on the problem. However, we can't just leave it as it is. She recognizes the mistakes and the solutions of those who came before, but she can't cut everything off like before. Medius expresses her sincerity from the bottom of her heart, hoping it reaches the entire populace. We need to carefully cut away without harming the normal threads and carefully reconnect them meticulously. Medius embodies harmonious combination, a school of thought that acknowledges the achievements of both sides. This is the time when we shouldn't lean towards an extreme but find balance and move forward harmoniously. Her solemn declaration was listened to by the entire populace. I, Medius, if I become the president of the Hero Association, will propose to the government that heroes be given the power to execute on the spot. Medius's unexpected measure left the entire populace speechless. The heroes granted this power will be selected through a stricter screening process. Their attentiveness and astonishment reflect Medius's influence in determining the list of villains to be executed on the spot. Sincam will make the most cautious decisions. In addition, Medius didn't forget to add how to handle the death row inmates of Alpha World, of course. She declared with a firm tone and incredibly insightful eyes, the death row inmates of Alpha World, all of them, will be subject to on-the-spot execution. I'm finished. Time's up, the final seconds have passed, the first debate is over. The candidates, regardless of their performance, can only turn around and go home. Finally, the difficult question that plagued the debate is time for an answer. Who is the right person to be the next leader of the Hero Association?